Welcome to Experts Talk on the Creative Society TV. Today, together with our experts, we will think outside of the box and discuss the causes and problems that are related to human trafficking and slavery. And most importantly, our guests will share ideas and solutions on how we can eliminate this terrible problem once and for all. Today, our experts will provide an insider's view of this terrible crisis. And my co-host today is Marina. Marina, hi.
Hello. Greetings, dear viewers. And I would like to introduce our guest today. One of our guests is the Chief Executive Officer of Columbia Private Investigation and Security Consultants, as well as a Director of I Think Safety for Me. Our guest provides technical assistance in organizing gang task force units in law enforcement agencies throughout the South Carolina. Let's welcome Lieutenant Chandra Cleveland.
Hello, everyone.
Great to see you.
Our next guest is the former Prosecutor and State Agent's Chief Counsel, who served as a crisis advocate coordinator and training specialist focusing on human trafficking, sexual assault, and domestic violence victims and survivors. He currently is an independent contractor providing human trafficking victim advocacy and training. Please help me welcome Stephen Turner.
Hi,
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Hello. And first, let's start with the description of this crisis. Could you please share how global is the problem of human trafficking and human slavery today?
To describe it, human trafficking right now in the U.S. is $150+ billion industry. That should tell you that human trafficking is, I should say, featuring everything and everywhere in the United States. We have some states in more areas of human trafficking than others, and it is a growing epidemic, and it is constantly forever changing day to day. So it's not the same thing that people think it was yesterday, or it wasn't the same thing that you may see in movies nowadays. It is strategically planned, since they know that you're aware of things just like anything else and any other crime. Once they know that law enforcement is aware of it, it changes on a daily. So you have to be educated about it, and everyone has to be on the same accord as to how to recognize the changes in human trafficking and sex trafficking.
Yeah, and let me just follow up on Chandra. I mean, absolutely, it is, and she and I have both been involved in law enforcement and prosecutions over the years. One thing that we both know is any estimate of the size and scope of trafficking, like any criminal enterprise, it is always underestimated. The bad guys want their product out there, whether their product is drugs, people, guns, whatever. The bad guys want their product out there. They want to stay hidden, and they're not publicly reporting companies. You know, it's not like a McDonald's SEC statement where you know how much money they've made. No. Also, this is in answer to your question too. I mean, not only it's global, it's national, it's state, it's local. It is down your block, and it hides in plain sight. So we've got a lot of work in front of us.
That is scary to think that, like, as you said, and we know this as well, that it literally could be anything on your block, and you would never know. Now, could you please share what is your biggest concern related to human trafficking and slavery?
my biggest concern is getting the information out to the people who are most vulnerable to human trafficking, and also making it where law enforcement have the right people who will run in contact with these young people or adults and let them know that there are resources and help available for them. Because I feel like a lot of these young girls and women who are out here who are being exploited, they don't know that there is a better way, that they do not have to do this. So until we have the right people encountering them and educating everybody who may encounter a human trafficking person, such as a state agency, a child protection agency, an emergency room, a judge, victim advocate, make sure that you have the right people in place. So one of them would be able to recognize this is a victim and need to be treated as such and not as a criminal.
Steve, what would you say is your biggest concern in this whole crisis today?
Well, I mean, I completely echo and agree with Chandra's assessment. One of the things that she and I and so many others are trying to do in this world is teach and train people to be trauma informed, so that when you encounter a victim, a survivor, that you are not judging them, that you're aware of sometimes very subtle signs, symptoms, indicators that they're either right on the edge. Because I mean, one thing that Chandra and I would both love in our perfect world, intercept people before they fall off the cliff into trafficking. I mean, the best case scenario is prevention as opposed to aftercare. But to spread the word, like Chandra said, spread the word about what this looks like, the lies that are spread by the recruiters, by the pimps, by the gangs, the tricks, the manipulations, and also too, that intersection of drug dependency and drug dependency. I mean, when you look at drugs, people are medicating away pain for a whole variety of reasons, and people are in pain. And when these kids, these teens, these young adults who have come up through really bad circumstances, nobody wants to be in pain. And so you medicate away the pain. And once you have to pay for drugs and you run out of money, what you can sell, what you can trade is your body. And that is a horrible, slippery slope.
Yes, it is. And Chandra also mentioned that the human trafficking is like multi-billion industry. And I was wondering what makes it so profitable? And maybe you can share it with us. What do you think is the root cause of this problem?
What makes it so profitable is it's a resellable, recyclable thing. You can sell a body over and over and over and over again. Whereas when it's in the drug industry, we've seen drug industry grow very high, but there's a limit because you can only sell that use of drug one time. When you can take someone's body and you can sell them over and over and over again, that's what makes it so profitable. And then when you get in an industry where top people, such as the prince, such as a president, such as a delegate, that is buying a person for their pleasure. Wow. I mean, this is how we get to $1 billion industry, because we have people out there who are willing to pay over and over again for the product.
Yeah, I mean, Chandra, absolutely. You can only purchase ounces, pounds, keys of drugs, cut it with something, sell it. You run out of product. You've got to get more product. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we have seen so many of the victims and survivors we have worked with, they have said to me and said to other advocates that they are forced to perform sex acts. They're raped 15, 20 or more times per day. I mean, the trauma load on that is almost impossible to even conceptualize, but it shows again the renewable resell of a human being. One of the things, though, too, and we were talking about this before we went on here, I have to say that as a male, the demand side is male, and every male has to take a stand and completely condemn the purchase of commercial serial rape, and whether you are purchasing a girl, a boy, a woman, or a man for sex, that is the demand side. It is male driven, and males have to own it, condemn it, and do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say, I guess, is the root cause of this problem in this global problem in our society?
The root cause of the problem is that there's not enough people educated in order to know what to do and what sex trafficking looks like. And if you don't have the education, because it's a constant change in human trafficking and the victims, and one of the biggest change and the way that it keeps happening is that most of the victims don't know that they're victims. They do not consider themselves as a sex trafficking victim. Therefore, this thing is easy to keep festering until we get a hold, or someone who is educated in the process, to let them know this is not love. This is not a way to make a living. You are a victim, and there are ways that we can help you to get out of what you're in right now.
Yeah. You know, the manipulation, the lies, the normalization of violence. You know, one of the things that we have seen, you know, in our 13 county project that I work with, about 80% of the survivors are U.S. citizens, 20% are overseas nationals. Among the U.S. citizens, over 95% grew up in a home with domestic violence, where then violence in the home is normalized. Emotional violence is normalized. Over 95% of those U.S. citizens we work with, they were sexually assaulted or raped in the home by the time they were 12. Sometimes they were sexually assaulted. I mean, I've had victims tell me they remember being raped at 5 years old. So when you pile on massive amounts of trauma and the normalization of hyperviolence, the normalization of emotional, physical, and sexual violence, the world is upside down. And that's where Chanda absolutely nailed it. That if normal is hyperviolence, then you may not know or understand that this world you're living in, you don't have to live that way. And that is not, I know the word normal is dangerous, but that's not something that everybody has to do. But it only works if we can get to them.
Sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's scary to think that it's, as you said, in our society, the normalization, that right now this is the norm. And as you mentioned before as well, and we can talk about it again, that the cases are not decreasing. It sounds like this problem is not being solved. Now, is that true? Can you talk a little bit about this? How are the cases? Is there any progress, I would say, throughout the years?
No, it's sad to say that you would think we would have progress now of these numbers decreasing with more education and more funding that is put into it, but it's not. We have different types of people that are joining the bandwagon because they see that they're able to make money off of it. And with the criminalization of most of the victims who should be treated as victims are treated as criminals, that also sends that young person or older person back to where they came from because of the lack of of resources and information to it. So it's not decreasing, it is increasing because of the times. During the pandemic, sex trafficking increased 35 to 45%. That's what the officials say. So you know that number is increasingly higher than that. So now within the situation in which we're in right now, we have so much lack of funds, lack of money, lack of grocery, lack of housing, that now some women are finding themselves selling family members. And in certain areas of the world, family, the person who are victimizing and selling their children in order to live or to make a decent living, to have somewhere to stay. So it is an increase because of where we are in this world right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, Chandra, I mean, you know, the pandemic, the lockdowns over pandemic, which again were necessary from a public health perspective until we could get our hands around what the issue was, not have people dying every 10 seconds, et cetera. But that was paradise for the perpetrators of domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking, because people were more isolated, and they were literally and figuratively locked down. And providers of social services were also hurting. Hospitals were hurting. Everybody was hurting. Another thing that's happening too is, and we had talked about this before, the global nature of this. When you look at, if my numbers are off a little bit, I apologize. You've got, say, 8 to 10 million Ukrainians who have fled the country, 8 to 10 million, probably more, who are internally displaced. If you are internally displaced or externally displaced, if you are on the move anywhere, you are vulnerable. And there are people who will take advantage of that. When you look at what the world population is going through right now, between famine, disease, look what's happening still in Syria. Look at sub-Saharan Africa. Look at the DRC, Sudan, Eritrea. I mean, on and on and on and on. Central and South America, the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, you know, very unstable de facto narco gang states. People are fleeing conflict, and disease. Everybody that is fleeing somewhere is vulnerable to being trafficked. So this, it's bad.
And I think you said it, everything, we can see how everything is interconnected right now. And I know you and I talked about it before as well. So now let's move to the next part. Let's talk about the solution. So if we were to think outside of the box, if you as experts had unlimited resources, had everything you need to fix this problem, could you please tell us, how can we eliminate this problem at the root? What would it take and what can be done?
Oof. It would need the right people at the top. It will need the right person at the top that's truly having everything accountability for what's going on from state to state. So we would need resources, for financial resources from the top, from someone who actually knows about human trafficking. That is one of the reasons why we are where we are, because the people at the top right now are not the ones who actually know how human trafficking is occurring in the streets that we have. Next, we would have to be someone who is actually taking it to the people who are the most vulnerable, making sure that anyone who comes in contact with those people are educated in order to know the resources. We have commercials about everything else, and I saw it a little bit during the pandemic. They had a commercial about human trafficking, sex trafficking. If you're a victim of it, here's a number, and they flash some things of that. We need more of that, because we have other things that are showing more often than not on television that's advertising a sexual life that will be pleathered with money and resources for you to have. So we need to have more interactions of commercials and things like that to show that this is called sex trafficking. Because like I've said 100 times before, if a victim doesn't know any better, and as we were talking a few moments ago, that if they don't know what true love really is, then this is what they have fallen prey to. You know, there's been so many things that organizations that are out there, those organizations who are doing the work, they need more funding to continue to do the work. And that is something that I see all the time. The ones who are actually out there recovering girls and doing things, they're not getting the funding that they need in order to keep doing what they're doing. So giving the right funding to organizations who are out there making a difference, pass harsher sentences on people who do sex traffic victims, have more accountability on the internet. We have no control of our internet. It's like the wild, wild west. It's open, and children and grown people who do not know how to operate it fall prey to these people who are contacting them in their DMs, talking to them in their DMs. We need a sex trafficking cyber patrol unit that can see these opportunities and get these people and lock them down. And after we do that, we need to be proactive. We got to stop being reactive and be proactive. We need to educate young girls. We need to tell them again about good touch, bad touch. We need to tell parents who are out there struggling how you can get help within your family in order to pay the bills, to feed your children legally. So, you know, if we start with those few things of getting someone at the top of government, funding the right organization, educating the young people before they become a victim, and also advertising that this is a form of sex trafficking so we can educate everyone at the same time, we will not be able to get a hand on what's exactly happening to our children, who cannot be children the way they're supposed to be during their childhood age before they become a victim who's shut down and cannot be the person they should be.
Yeah, you know, we really need to have both a global and national declaration of emergency about trafficking. I mean, it is a pandemic of its own right. It is not a communicable virus, but is communicable through interpersonal violence and the destabilization of individual people, no matter where they are. It's taking advantage of them. You know, another thing too, I mean, we see so much of an intersection between drug addiction, drug dependency, and trafficking victims, because they are medicating away the pain of horror that they survive. I mean, so, you know, until we have ready access to drug detox and rehab beds, yeah, and like Chandra said, just massive continued education. You know, there ought to be the National Human Trafficking Hotline in the United States of America. The National Trafficking Hotline is staffed 24/7 by amazing advocates who will do screening and provide assistance to the best of their ability, et cetera. I mean, that number should be running constantly underneath, you know, every screen, all the time, everywhere. That's as important as 911 as a number that we need to know and utilize and make sure people have access to. So there's so much that can be done, but it is such a sprawling problem. And also, you know, it's a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about interpersonal violence. A lot of people are uncomfortable talking about rape and serial rape. I mean, we need to get comfortable talking about the uncomfortable. We got to face it. And until we can face it straight up, eyes open, then it has an ally in ignorance.
Now, I have to ask this because this might come up as a question. So we're talking about, and I know, Chandra, you mentioned this as well, that when we were talking about that the number of victims and sex trafficking victims is only increasing, and you said that the amount of funds is also increasing, yet we do not see a decrease in the victims. Yet, would you say that if we start putting more money into organizations, if we start funding organizations, how can this help then if we see that the increase in funds did not help in the past?
Well, I'm going to shoot it straight. I always do. I'm saying give the funding to the people who are showing you results. The fundings right now are going to government offices and things like that, and they're not going anywhere near where the victims that seem to be growing within the area. So when I say give the funding, I mean give the funding to people who have results. If you see them getting and rescuing each day, they're rescuing girls the way it should be, not on an operational sting that's going to take you 6 months. We did a sting for 6 months, government official, and I like every sting that they do, but I feel we have this such a growing problem. Why isn't this an every night, every day takedown? Why do we have to do operationals and stings? We have organizations out there that are rescuing girls on a daily. Why not fund those organizations? Give them more manpower of people to support them. Get other people to be trained by them to show them how are you so effective in rescuing these girls. That will make a change, and that will stop the problem, along with giving these guys more time once you find them, that they have created this horrible crime. Give them the time that should be given instead of letting them do time serve or a slap on the wrist for this and that and let them back out again. But that's what I mean about giving the right organizations the funding who's doing the work.
You know, we also, I mean, there has been, compared to the flood of victims, there's a trickle of funding increase. I mean, it's a bit more, but it's nowhere near in proportion to the identification of victims that we are all seeing and the people that need help. And then also, we are not funding prevention side stuff so that before, again, somebody falls off the cliff into trafficking. You know, how do we prevent this? Well, we prevent it, number one, through education, but also identifying early on sources of poverty, sources of hunger. You know, Chandra said, you know, she's right. You know, there's an increase, or at least we're identifying more sources of familial trafficking, family members trafficking family members. You know, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, even older siblings trafficking younger siblings. Sometimes it is to feed addiction. Sometimes it is to literally feed the people, rent, subsistence. There's a whole confluence of factors that drive that. At the end of the day, though, it's the lack of resources. You know, when you have an empty belly, your day starts down from the get-go. You know, education, housing, food, medical care, the basic structures that preserve human dignity, provide the platform, the base for people to move up and make things happen on this planet. And until we take care of those basic things, but we can address those if we choose to, and perhaps a declaration of global or national emergency is what would be required to treat this like the survival issue that it is.
Thank you very much. So what I see, on one hand, we have laws of moral value in our society, which create a demand for sexual exploitation. But on the other hand, we have economical challenges, like financial challenges that people facing, and that what push them to sell their own body, to sell their kids, their relative. So, and basically get involved in this huge industry. So, and now the question, so how we can fix that? So how we can fix our society, the model of it, so we can eliminate that problem.
Before we came on, Olga, Chandra, Marina, and I, what we were talking about was, on one hand, we were going to paint, and we have sadly, and I think effectively painted, a story of real badness out there. But here's the thing. Those of us in this fight, we have not given up on other human beings. And this is one soul at a time, one person at a time. And, one person, then there's no more powerful advocate than a survivor who has popped out the other side. Or perhaps somebody who sees that they were just on the precipice of falling into the pit and didn't, because of people like Chandra who intervene, who are there, who are working to try and help people. And so while this is big and bad and global, etc., it is not hopeless. And the restoration of individual dignity. I mean, when I'm sitting there in an emergency department, in a trauma bay, in the shelter that we have, whatever, and somebody will make a disclosure, and then we can work on a path forward, safety plan, a plan for the rest of their life. That human being, she or he, she can cause their own wave of hope and recovery. And when we do things to intervene with people, and they might have been suicidal 10 seconds before, and now we can disconnect the suicidal ideation that drives so much of this because of desperation and pain. You cannot discount that one person, one soul at a time. And that's the hope. And it is not this massive, fix. It's tough work. But there's nothing more important than saying to that one individual person, eyeball to eyeball, you matter. What can we do to get you to the next stop?
Now, I was just thinking, almost the exact same thing. If we can save one, if we can get everybody with that notion, I can save one, you can save one, and educate them on how to do it, we're doing our job. Because there's one person out there just waiting for us. It's one person out there waiting for someone to say, I will help you. I will rescue you. You're not hopeless. And your innocence may be stolen, but you're not hopeless. And you're not forgotten. And we're going to come out and we're going to save you. If we can get that message out around the world of different people saying that and letting people hear it so they know it in their language. And that's another thing that is so important. We need to speak their language so they understand that we are here to help them. It makes me sad when it seems like I cannot reach a person. And I always tell them, if I'm not saying what you need to hear right now, just know that when you're ready and you need someone, come get me. We will together help you and get you the help that you need. But one person at a time, if we can get everybody around the world to have a notion, one person at a time, one child at a time that you rescue from human trafficking, we can make a difference.
Chandra, I mean, you're right. And we both talked about this a little bit. When someone is ready, because it's not a light switch. You don't just flip a switch and, I think you ought to be ready. You think you ought to. No. It's that victim. It's that survivor when she or he is ready. And that's why it is a relentless pursuit of opportunity to provide that safe moment for them. because it can occur in the most unexpected, unsuspecting thing. I apologize. You may have heard upstairs. You may have heard a little bit of barking dogs in the background. If anybody can hear that, I apologize. Here's what's going on. We have two little therapy dogs upstairs that I had to put in the bedroom where they would have been sitting right here with me, and you would have had 3 people on the screen rather than 1. But those little therapy dogs, when I take them to shelter or when I take them to the secure juvenile holding facility near where I work up there, they have gotten disclosures. And why? Because they are unconditional love and no judgment. It's a little dog with a wagging tail who says, I'm with you. And what do you need? That is an example of the power of what can be transformative depending on the time and place.
And, we are discussing these heavy topics today, and we are uniting experts on the Creative Society platform because these crises have an effect on all of us, because these are the crises that surround us in our daily lives. And we can see that today we live in this consumerist format, and this consumerist format promotes, supports, and contributes to the development of low qualities of a human being. And we can see this today. And therefore, we have the wars, we have the violence, we have the lies, and we have deceit all around the world today. And every person in the world, unfortunately, today is uncertain about what's going to happen tomorrow. And I would say that today, every person is not confident about tomorrow. And this is why millions of people from around the world have united on the Creative Society platform, because we understand that we need to change the format of the society that we live in. We need to change the format to the one where human life is of the highest value. And we understand today that even this one thing will change everything in our world. And also, the Creative Society will provide, and I know, Steve, you mentioned this as well, and this seems like a huge problem. It will provide free healthcare, high-quality healthcare worldwide, free education. It will provide free housing for people, even if it's, nothing big. It will still be free, because we are human beings and we deserve to live in a world where we feel safe, where we have the peace, and where we are sure about the tomorrow. And I know we kind of talked about this one question before, and maybe you can share with us what kind of a world would you like to live in? How do you picture this perfect society where you, yourself, your friends and family will be happy?
I would say help those who need help. If we could help those who need help and love people like we love ourselves, I think that type of society would be a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, while this is I'm going to describe the story of the Good Samaritan. While that is a Christian parable, it is a universal goal and story. So the fact that whether it's in the Gospel of Luke or not, to me, that is irrelevant. What's relevant is this: there's somebody beaten up on the side of the road and somebody else stops. A stranger. In fact, it could even be somebody who might not be friendly to them, could even be perhaps an enemy, stops to help that human being in distress, picks them up, gets them to care, and doesn't judge and just says, "You're beaten up. I'm coming by. I'm going to help you." Period. That, to me, is what a Good Samaritan is. And that behavior would be completely transformative, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think so too. So, and I know that like one generation is enough in order to completely forget about violence, about war, about all that bad thing that we are facing right now in our society. But in order to achieve it, we really need to unite around this idea, around this goal, and do everything possible that every day we're getting closer to our goal, to our dream society.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And, we understand how important it is to unite experts from all over the world, not just in the US, but to share ideas and to share solutions and to brainstorm together in order to solve the crisis that we're facing today. Because we also see that, it's all starts small, like it does right now. Before today, you guys didn't know each other, and now you do. And already today, so many solutions were voiced. And I'm sure that, in the future, more and more experts will join, and we will have more expert talks such as this one. And of course, we invite experts from all over the world to join experts talks on various topics. You can also email us at info@creativesociety.com. We would love to hear from you. And we've been here for quite some time now. Maybe Chandra and Steve, maybe you can kind of, say some last words to our viewers. What would you like to wish to the viewers that are watching us today?
Get educated on sex trafficking. Join an organization in your community to get educated on what sex trafficking look like, how you can be of help. And if there's not one near your community, go to the website of polaris.org and they will show you the nearest community that has a sex trafficking organization close to you. And maybe you can partner with them or create your own. Don't wait for someone else to help you. Sex trafficking is a big ordeal that you can get educated and start an organization on your own to educate everyone in your community. So, I mean, it's something that we all can have a part in solving.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said Polaris, because Polaris is also the home for the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And whether there's an anti-trafficking organization near you, what hopefully is near you is a domestic violence shelter, a rape crisis center, or even more elemental, a food program. The number of people who are hungry, no matter where on this planet, if you are hungry, you are vulnerable, and you can end up being trafficked out of hunger. So feeding bellies, that's not going to help trafficking. Actually, it will. Yeah, battling trafficking is putting a floor underneath people so they're standing on a floor and not free falling. There's so many things you can do, but extending that hand to somebody who is vulnerable, that is elemental anti-trafficking. And you being educated and spreading the word and using something like the Polaris website with solid, real, credible information. That's key too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, for sharing the solutions with our viewers, for sharing some advice on what they can do and how they can stop this, I would say, disease, this crisis that we have in the world today. And we're so happy to have you with us today. And we're looking forward to seeing you on more of Expert Talks in the future.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.